Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the last Finance and Administration meeting of 2020. Thanks to all for being here today. I'm going to call this F&A meeting to order at 9:30. Has roll call been taken, Debbie?
Through you, Chair, to committee, yes, roll call has been taken.
Thank you so much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Can I get an adoption of the minutes of our previous meeting held on October 15th, 2020, please? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Peckett. Any errors or omissions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we have no delegations. I'm going to turn this over to Paul. Paul, I think what we'll do, let's do your report in its entirety, including the addendum.
Okay, thank you. The first item in the report, Chair, item number 1 is the inaugural meeting. And again, it's just information with respect to the planned inaugural meeting for December 15th, 2020. And again, you'll see the report that suggests that we're going to continue on with virtual meetings. And given the news this morning and some of the numbers we're seeing, I think that's a prudent move. So we will have more of an agenda and a game plan for the inaugural in the weeks to come, but just know that the basis of it will be a virtual meeting. Item number 2, Chair, the community messaging, the vigilance campaign. And again, some great work by the crisis communications team, continuing to get the message out there with respect to wearing of masks and maintaining separation and 6-foot distance between friends and other members of the public.
So Paul, just the typo let out guards that got repaired.
Oh, thank you, Chair, for pointing that out. Thank you. That's on the 4th sentence at the end of it. Cannot let our guards down. Thank you, Chair, for
just for County Council. Let's have that fixed.
Yes, it did get fixed. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Moving to resolutions, Chair. Item number 3, recommendation. Whereas County Council adopted the recommendations contained in the follow-up report on the continuity of operations and services in response to COVID-19 dated September 30th, 2020. And whereas staff have been directed to bring a further analysis of the COVID-19 pandemic and review the potential for the resumption of face-to-face council meetings at the November 2020 meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee and County Council. And whereas the number of COVID-19 cases has continued to increase dramatically in the months of September and October, and now I can say in the province of Ontario anyways, November. Therefore, be it resolved that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend to County Council that staff continue to implement the recommendations contained in the follow-up report on the continuity of operations and services in response to COVID-19 dated September 30th, 2020. And further that County Council and committees of County Council for the months of December, January, and February be held electronically. And further that the County of Renfrew facilities offices be opened on a limited basis when and where needed for appointments. And further that staff continue to provide services both remotely and through arranged in-person meetings. And further that staff be directed to provide a follow-up to the February 2021 Finance and Administration Committee and County Council. And the background is there for committee's review.
Thank you. Perhaps I should have reviewed information before I moved on to resolutions. Sorry about that, Paul.
No, that's okay.
Back. Is there anything on number 1, the inaugural meeting? Well, this will be one for the books, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. Will you be delivering lunch to all of our homes? Like a bank lunch?
That is yet to be determined, but the warden is smiling.
All right. Is there anything on number 2, the vigilance campaign? All right. So now under resolutions, can I get a mover and a seconder for that recommendation, please? Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Anything further on continuity of operations? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. All right. Let's continue on to bylaws.
Item number 4, bylaws, acting CAO. Chair, if I may, I'll read the recommendation. That the revised bylaw to appoint a chief administrative officer to define the duties thereof, appointing Mr. Jeffrey Foss as acting chief administrative officer for the period of January 1, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, be adopted at the next session of County Council.
Okay, so can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Donahue, second by Councillor Peckett. Any comments? All right, all in favor? Thank you. So now we'll move to the addendum.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll go to number.
It's all you and the addendum. Yes, okay. Sorry, I just need to bring that up. All right, carry on.
So item number 5 in the addendum, congratulations to Councillor Doncaster. I'll read the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend the County Council approve Councillor Doncaster's new role on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as the Vice Chair of the Rural Forum. Councillor Doncaster will receive the current remuneration rate when attending these meetings, taking care of that particular issue.
Perfect. Congrats. Okay, can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the warden, second by Councillor Sweet. Anything further? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Doncaster.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just a brief comment. I'm not exactly sure how this happened. I mean, you understand the election results, but from this, somebody on the current board certainly put my name forward, and then within the elected board of directors, there's an election for chairs and vice chairs, and somehow I prevailed on that. So humbled and very pleased to see that. So I don't have the list of the exact committee appointments that have been given, but I expect I might have it today sometime, but I'll certainly report it at County Council. Thank you.
That's great. Congrats again, Glenn. It's fantastic. All right, anything further? All in favor? Wonderful. All right, number 6.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read the recommendation if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend to County Council the consolidation of the Human Resources Department and the Finance Department as one department known as Corporate Services as per the Service Delivery Review Report. Further, that the approval of a manager of human resources position that is to be placed in Group 10 of the salary grid based upon review and utilization of the existing job evaluation tool, and further that the recruitment process for the manager of human resources position commence immediately. And the background is there, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder for this recommendation? Moved by Councillor Brose, second by Councillor Hunt. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Morrow, certainly this was part of the modernization report that came forward from Strategy Corp. There was some discussion at the last session, I believe that was on the 4th, if memory serves. Perhaps just some more background. At that time, there was some argument that the position would merit a director as part of senior leadership team. So I'm wondering, in now changing this to manager versus director, what are the pros and cons what has led to ultimately, besides that perhaps we are inconsistent with some peers. What is that which is driving this conversion?
Oh, I think I'll turn that over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll start with respect to, I'll work backwards through it. In fact, many of our peers have moved to a manager of corporate services. Lanark, beside us, for example, has a manager of HR and it has eliminated the director position. So not uncommon. When you do the analysis, it's a bit of a mix actually throughout Eastern Ontario in terms of whether it's manager or whether it's a director level position. We're following the advice of Strategy Corp in this particular case, knowing that we can find efficiencies. When you look at the business case, I believe there's an approximate, I think it's a $60,000 savings on an annual basis. When you look at salary and benefits, the difference between the 59,742, when you look at the difference between the director and the management position. Part of the consolidation though, when we're looking at further efficiencies, right now we'll see other efficiencies with the consolidation under corporate services that will help us at the administrative level as well. We think there will be more of a sharing opportunity between admin assistants and others. So we'll see that. So that's part of the rationale for the move to a manager and a consolidation of the two departments. Chair, if I may, Jeff may have something to add to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Finance and Administration Committee members. As the CIO had said, the part of the service delivery review document really speaks to enhanced opportunities for efficiencies and some of the economies of scale that can be achieved through workload sharing, cross-training, collaboration between the two departments. And so it was, their recommendation that based on our peers and a number of our peers who have a corporate services model as opposed to separate siloed divisions, they saw this over the longer term as being an opportunity where we could, at the County of Renfrew, again, share in some of those opportunities for efficiencies moving forward. There's no question that, we do need an individual that really will supervise that department and really take the lead on a number of very important initiatives. But having that department even geographically placed next door to the finance and IT departments really strategically allows us to move forward with some of those collaborations and some of those cross-training and some of those other efficiencies that we couldn't otherwise enjoy if we had a separate and siloed department. And so I think, we've talked about this over a number of months at the senior leadership team level. And so this is really a response to that recommendation coming forward within the Strategy Corp document.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Donahue.
Just to follow up, Madam Warden, so I certainly appreciate it. I know that each of us at the lower tier are also examining efficiencies. And I do appreciate the economic efficiencies that are derived here. Certainly at a director level, in my estimation, the substantive difference between manager and director is that strategic component. So there has been a director of human resources at the County of Renfrew for quite some time now. That is more what I was speaking to, that if it were automatic, I think that this would have been done some time ago. I'm presuming that strategic aspect that was brought by a director can also be accommodated through the new structure then?
I think that's what Strategy Core was saying, is that perhaps there wasn't a need for this particular job or the job description to be a director. Am I correct, Paul?
Yeah, you're correct in that assumption. Again, we're putting a lot on Jeff's shoulders here. It comes down to the individual who will be taking this on and providing oversight. We are hoping, though, that the management level type position at a Group 10 will be able to provide that advice to the senior leadership team where needed. Jeff and I have had a conversation about that, that the manager of HR, when required, would be invited to the senior leadership team meetings to be having those conversations with us about strategy and approach. So we have thought about some of those things in terms of bringing that position along and having them part of the senior leadership team when needed. Not unlike IT or other divisions that we have in the corporation that have unique functions to them. When we need to be strategic, develop long range plans, we include the management or the manager of that division. I would give you an example. One of the things Jeff and I have been talking about for late 2020 and 2021 would be the development of an IT strategy. So something that's strategic in nature for the corporation, something that will be led by the manager of IT, but there will be frequent conversations between that positions and the senior leadership team because of the nature of that discussion that will be occurring, and that will have a big impact on the corporation.
I think that makes sense. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Morrow, do you foresee the manager of human resources being able to provide the same services or similar services that are provided to the lower tier municipality today? As we went through our leg process, some of the townships thought that we may look at sharing a human resources manager or two between us. Some of the townships chose said their wish was to stay and get the support from the county. So do you foresee the county providing, and I think under today's scenario, they provide up to 7 hours per month on pay or on services without a fee, and after that you would provide or pay a fee. Do you see this continuing?
In the very short term, without having the manager in place yet, we're going to do our best to meet those obligations. But Jeff and I have had the conversations about once the manager is in place, we are going to do our best to continue on that level of service to the local municipalities. And maybe Jeff, I'll let you chime in here a little bit. You can speak to your vision a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And through you, Chair. So that's exactly what our intention would be. Obviously, we need to appropriately resource the department. But one of the advantages of kind of working within a unique marketplace is that some of the HR related issues that are being experienced in one municipality are very similar to those in another municipality. So entirely different business sectors and things that are very unique to one organization versus the other. So I think it makes some sense that we can kind of leverage the experience and skill sets of a particular individual, not only for our own organization, but for the 17 municipalities that make up the county of Renfrew. The challenge currently is that we are under-resourced until we put that position in place. We do have a human resources coordinator, an HRC position that works already within that department. So it will take some time before we get our feet underneath it and understand, how we can support a rather large organization, the County of Renfrew, and at the same time also provide, that support to our lower tiers. That is our intention, but we are a ways off from being able to be to doing that currently.
Thank you. Yes, Paul.
Just by way of example, job competitions and us supporting the local municipality. Really, that's done for us at the administrative level. We have some of our administrative staff who have all the job add templates ready to go, and something that's easier for us to continue. So we have the list of media and newspapers to get those job ads out to in support of the local municipality. I think we're doing that for Broodnow, Lindock, and Raglan currently, and that continues on. HR policy work. I'm hopeful that once the new manager's in place, that we can develop a consistent approach with respect to HR policies and support the local municipalities in delivering and updating their policies as well, should that need be required, because we have most of what we need already at the County of Renfrew. So some of it is HR administrative work, where there are some efficiencies that we would have here at the County of Renfrew that we can pass on.
Thank you. I think I saw Councillor Brose's hand up. Yes.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Paul. Paul, I was really glad to hear that, one of the things you were working on was making sure the manager of human resources would be invited to the senior leadership table, and also maybe to our finance and admin meetings on occasion. I think that's important. And I guess my question is, as this is going to involve a change where the manager reports to the Director of Corporate Services, do you anticipate that it might slow the process some, or are you confident that without a Director of HR that there will still be an amount of autonomy and flexibility for the HR manager to perform some of the duties that the former director did without having to come back through the corporate services, even though I know there'll be that communication link? Thank you.
If I may,
It comes to you from Councillor Brose in Boca Raton, Florida.
if I may, Chair, can I turn that one over to Jeff, and Jeff can
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So to Councillor Brose and the question, the model we have in place for the existing departments, so whether it be information technology or provincial offences administration, those individuals, work very independently in their manager role with the guidelines and parameters and policies that are established for those functions. And there is, constant communication between myself and those separate management functions, where, the process, as you said, may slow down somewhat is when we get into the area of developing new policy. And, I would suggest to this group that that's an area that we wouldn't want to be immediately, we would want to take our time with ensuring that policies that we are developing or new programs or new services, that we clearly understand, what our abilities are to deliver some of these new programs and services, and whether or not the framework is in place. And once we have that established, the autonomy is there for each one of those managers to be working within those frameworks. So, I think for matters, I'm not going to call them routine matters, but for matters that fall well within the scope of the manager's responsibility, I think there will be a direct response coming right from the manager. And really, it would just then be a communication issue between myself and each one of those reporting departments. So I don't see I don't see this as an inefficient model. I think once again, it allows us to really leverage some of the resources that are within each one of those departments, place those resources where we need them, so that overall we have a very efficient corporate services division or group of departments, if you will.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Hunt's comments, I think that Council has certainly, I think, been clear in the value of this, and I have had multiple conversations with Mr. Morrow. I think that the relationship from an HR perspective amongst the lower tier and the County of Renfrew leads to very convenient cross-pollination. And I think just on this video right here, Craig Kelly is perhaps illustrative of that, given that the career path may involve moving from the county to a township, back to the county, et cetera, that I think there is an incredible value. With respect to the comments that I had mentioned earlier, Mr. Morrow did speak to that, because one of the concerns was what this was now doing to the workload for Mr. Foss, the Director of Finance of the county. But I think that perhaps you could confirm, I'm assuming that this has been made possible by the fact that after a 4-year vacancy, the Financial Services Office is once more occupied, because otherwise I think that could have been a challenge. Was that part of the matrix on this decision?
I'll start with that, Jeff. That was part of the decision in terms of, making sure that Jeff had the support underneath him with respect to delivering on the various different programs. Jeff and I have talked a number of times about putting the FSO position in place, so he had the ability, as you spoke about, Councillor Donahue, and that is being more strategic in his role, because without the FSO position, Jeff had been doing a lot of the day-to-day administrative work, and I'm hoping that that with the FSO in place, that he's able to have some more time in his schedule, that he can think more broadly about his corporate role. With that said, this change within the HR department was not anticipated, and it has added to Jeff's workload as well. So that's a separate conversation down the road that I would like to have with Jeff with respect to compensation and approach. And I suspect I'll be bringing that back to committee, in the months to come.
Thank you. Anything further? Then I will call for the vote. All in favor? Excellent. That carries. All right, number 7.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll read the resolution.
Yes, please.
That the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the signing authority for the Corporation of the County of Renfrew Bank of Montreal accounts be updated to remove Bruce Beakley and to add Daniel Burke. Further, that 2 of the following 4 names have signing authority: Warden Debbie Robinson, Paul Morrow, Jeffrey Foss, or Daniel Burke.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Sweet, second by Councillor Brose. Any comments, concerns, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries. Wonderful. Number 8, please.
Thank you, Warden. I'll read the recommendation. Or sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy the Warden's
Nice.
on that mistake.
I have to say that's the second time I've been called Warden. Our Warden has been in place for a year. It's been a year. Go ahead.
How about I just keep going?
Yeah, go. Yeah, keep going.
That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that County Council approve that the following provincial delegations be requested during the Roma Conference. Ministry of Health Virtual Triage and Assessment, Minister of Infrastructure, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream under the Invest in Canada Infrastructure Program in Ontario, and the following topics that have been previously identified as concerns by the County of Renfrew will be considered: Algonquin Trail Development, Economic Development Opportunity, Service Delivery Improvement Project, finding efficiencies in the County of Renfrew.
Thank you. All right, I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Beckett, second by Councillor Lancaster. Discussion. I think these are great. Question for you, Paul. This resilience fund, is this the fund that we were recently advised by our MPP? That is that particular fund.
Chair, I believe so. The Warden has her hand up.
Oh, Warden Robinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I had actually had a conversation with Minister Yakubuski yesterday, trying to clarify whether or not the resilience fund that we thought we were making application for or hope to make application for, and then we had a delegation at AMO about if that is the same fund that is now the one where we're being allotted $255,000 if we can present them with an acceptable project. He is not clear as to if those are separate funds or not. So by the end of the day today, he will have received from us a letter outlining what our questions are around these funds, if they're different funds, if they're the same fund. So if there's two, and one that we were looking for millions of dollars from we were hoping with the resilience fund. So we'll see where it goes from there, but it's absolutely as clear as mud right now.
Thank you for that, Warden. And I couldn't agree with you more. There are so many different funds with so many different names under so many different faculties or ministries. It is as clear as mud. I couldn't agree with you more. I was speaking with Councillor Donoghue the other day, and he said something that stuck in my brain. I wonder if even Peter Bethlenfalvey can keep all these different funding streams straight. I mean, it's wonderful, but a bit confusing. So yeah, I think if we can clear some of this up, that would be wonderful. All right, if there's nothing else, Councillor Brose.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'm just wondering if we could add to delegations at our Social Service Committee meeting. I brought forward the recommendation that, and it was supported by committee, that we lobby for some support for our early child care workers, because in our paramedic services, our long-term care PSWs, they all got some of the pandemic enhancement pay. And yet our ECEs did not receive any of that pay. And currently there's a shortage of ECE workers because of the new COVID protocols for cleaning, et cetera. They've gone from one ECE working with, I believe it was 6 children. It's now 1 for every, I believe it's either 2 or 3. So even though the number of children in our childcare centers has decreased, the number of workers to support them has increased. And there's a real challenge trying to fill some of those positions because of the low pay. And yet without these childcare support workers, our frontline services like our paramedics, like our long-term care nurses and PSWs might not be able to provide those services if they didn't have the childcare support. So I'm just wondering if that could also be added as a delegation. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I guess that would go to Todd Smith, and I'm sure he would gladly have a delegation with us. Would that just be a friendly amendment, Paul?
If we could, Warden, can we just make it clean and have a mover and a second to amend the resolution to include another delegation with respect to childcare and the compensation during the pandemic for ECE workers?
I think that's probably the way to go if the mover and seconder are okay with it. Warden Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to indicate, it would go to the Minister of Education, Stephen Leshy.
Oh, sorry.
I believe that's where the funding comes
Children's
from.
Services.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
You are correct. It should go to education. My bad.
It's okay, Warden.
Paul didn't even flinch.
No.
So the mover and the seconder, are you all right with that amendment? I think that's an excellent suggestion. No, Michael's saying no. Yes, Councillor Donoghue.
I'm okay with the amendment, Madam Chair. I think that what Mr. Morrow is looking for is for someone to move that this be added, that this be amended to add this, that be then considered, and then to
Okay.
consider the bottom, the ultimate. And just while I have this, I want to say that I have full confidence in Peter Bethlen-Falvey's competence.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's very confident, but I thought I'm sure that you know, our MPP and minister, I mean, these things are coming down so quickly that I can imagine where you know, even Yak isn't sure about which fund is which fund. And I just thought that was a funny comment that, yeah, I mean, I think we're all confused at this point, but thankful that our province and the feds are trying to take care of us. All right, so I need a mover and seconder for the amendment then. Moved by Councillor Brose, second by Councillor Doncaster. Any further discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Excellent. Great suggestion, Councillor Brose. All right, and I need a mover and seconder for the CAO's report as a whole, please.
Can we back up?
Sure.
Can we get a vote on the recommendation as amended?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, right, as amended, can I call for the vote, please? All in favor? Wonderful. All right, now thanks, Paul. I need a mover and seconder for Paul's report as a whole, please. Moved by Councillor Doncaster, second by Councillor Hunt. Anything further? All in favor? Awesome sauce. Just give me a minute. I'm gonna go back to my. All right, and if we turn to page 15, Jeff, are you with us? There you are. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. And as you mentioned, we're on page 15 of the report, which is my report to the Finance and Administration Committee. Item number 1, council remuneration to September the 30th. Item number 2 would be the Treasury report, also to September the 30th. And at council's request, we bring forward to you the quarterly reports. And so this is our third quarter report to September the 30th. Number 3, dealing with the virtual triage and assessment center accounts receivable, the good news story. I reported at a previous meeting that we had billed just in excess of $1 million to our Prior Regional Health for our activities related to the Vtac program. And other than a one-time payment in the month of April for $150,000, we had $867,000 outstanding. Subsequent to, I guess, the spotlight that we were shining on the unpaid funds, we did receive 4 payments for the 4 outstanding months, processed on October the 8th, 16th, the 22nd, and on the last day, October the 30th. I'm pleased to report to this committee that all of those balances have been cleared in full, and so we're very pleased to report that progress. Item number 4 is also a good news story, and I'm very happy to bring a good news story to this committee. I think over the years we've all read horror stories about the activities of cyber criminals on all of organizations, certainly operating within the Canadian environment. And now I think we can report that the County of Renfrew is no exception. And so we had obviously one of our vendors working on a large construction contract for the County of Renfrew. Their email system had been hacked. So the cyber criminals were well aware of the fact by following their email transactions that they were working for the County of Renfrew, and reached out to us asking for us to change some banking information so that we could transfer some funds a rather large deposit. Now, of course, the email system would have acknowledged the fact that we were preparing to pay for a progress payment to this vendor in excess of $300,000. And they took that opportunity to very quickly reach out to our accounts payable department, asking for a change in banking information. Everything looked very legitimate. Of course, the email was coming from that company. They are an EFT vendor. They did complete the notice of change document, which is our County of Renfrew document, completed it and sent it to us, and did send a copy of a scanned check indicating the new account information where this payment should go. You know, our policy is, of course, the completed document as well as an original source document from your banking institution, so we can verify the validity of the the banking information and the change in the banking information. Some of the email correspondence indicates that was due to COVID and this unusual environment that we're all operating in within a pandemic. Would we accept a scanned copy of the check because they could not deal with original source documentations? And so that was a flag for our account payable department. Also, the scanned check looked unusual. Let's put it that way. It certainly had the appearance that it may have been altered. And so our accounts payable clerk, Ms. Diane Rance, reached out and attempted to confirm via her independent activities whether or not this banking change was legitimate. And in fact, it was not. So to make a long story short, we have turned this matter over to the Ontario Provincial Police. We have filed a report with an attempted cyber crime. We've reached out to the vendor, our contractor, to let them know about the breach in their email system. Happy to report that this was resolved without any loss to any organization. And I do want to acknowledge the efforts of Diane Rance. We owe her a debt of gratitude for her professionalism, her attention to detail, and her perseverance in really ensuring that we were doing the right thing. So very sophisticated. It is in Renfrew County. So really just wanted to make sure that I shared this with Finance Committee. I hope to bring this matter forward to all of County Council just to ensure that all of us have these policies and programs in place. And simply because there's a pandemic, these cyber criminals are attempting to find a crack in the door somewhere where they can exploit, the current situation for their benefit. So happy to report that did not happen. We didn't make the 6 o'clock news like some of our peers in Ontario. And so we have moved to even enhance our own security protocols where when we receive this change in banking information from these vendors, we're reaching out via our own independent activities and confirming that in fact that this is a change that they are requesting. So happy to report some good news there. Provincial Offenses Administration workload is item number 5. And just drawing your attention to the 4th column from the left called Early Resolution Notices. And you'll see in the month of September, we got very, very busy with dealing with some of the backlog that was in place. There were 402 early resolution notices that we sent out in the month of September. And that translated into a 258 trial notices that were issued in the month of October. And all those trial notices have to deal with the early resolution activities in the month before. So we are moving forward within the parameters of the Ministry of the Attorney General with attempting to move some of these cases as best we can through the system, even though we are dealing in a virtual reality now, but the activities are moving forward. The current in-person court activities, they are suspended until I think it's January the 21st of 2021. Item number 6 is really just an update for your information. We are a member of the Municipal Court Managers Association, and they had some comments from an advocacy point of view with respect to the POA modernization project. And so I leave that, I share that with you for your information. Item number 7, last week, we did have a new provincial budget. And I thought that the Municipal Finance Officers Association did a really good job, as they have done in previous budgets, of really just summarizing all of the impacts in the budgets for municipalities. They've broken it down sort of by category, if you will, so we can understand fiscal challenges, what are the impacts on health, what are the impacts on taxation. So there's some really good summary there, and happy to discuss that further. And I wonder, Madam Chair, if I would stop there before moving to resolutions.
Yes, please. Thanks, Jeff. All right, so we will go back to information. Item number 1, council remuneration. Item number 2, the treasurer's report as of September 20th or 30th, sorry. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just broadly, a couple of questions. I note throughout there's hardly a department not affected by COVID. There's a line item on expense COVID throughout, and I think when I tallied them, it was something north of $2 million in expenditures. And I know, consistent with the conversation that we'd had earlier with respect to the resiliency funding, it has become enormously challenging to try and stay on top, certainly as a councillor. I'm quite certain even Mr. Foss would attest, because there are funds that are being received directly into line items. I'm sure committee will have noted several recoveries with no budgeted items have now shown some significant budgeted receipts. Off the top of my head, I'm assuming one of those or several of those may be pandemic pay. In any event, all of this is preamble to, I know that this is the final quarterly report, certainly that we are going to receive in 2020, but in January of 2021, I believe each committee will see a report as part of budgeting process, I presume, that I think is through November 30th with a forecast towards the end of the year. I'm wondering at that time, much like we did in I believe August, if there could be a report where all of the COVID impact, both our expenditures and our revenues, could be broken out and identified separately, because it's had an enormous impact on our 2020 fiscal year, and it's difficult to fully wrap my head around where we truly, like, this is showing some not insubstantial surplus variance, but I think when some of the COVID impact is removed, it may actually be deficit, and I'm only speculating on that. I could not begin to wrap my head around, but I think, Madam Chair, that there would be some value in doing that for the January financial reporting.
I completely concur. Jeff, is that something that you can do for us? Because I did find that graph very useful.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Donahue. Quite rightly so. This is a very difficult process to sort of parse out, if you will, the COVID impact within those financial statements. Just going back to the last time that we presented a summary table to Council at the end of August, our expenditures are in excess of $5 million in COVID-related activities. That includes our Vtac program, and so we're identifying that as one of the new programs created as a result of the pandemic. But we do have direct revenues offsetting those expenses in excess, or at about $4.3 million. So even at the end of August, we were $960,000 short overall across the corporation with respect to net municipal expenses that were not covered by a direct funding program already identified by the province of Ontario. What we did not know at the August meeting was really the full impact of the federal Safe Start program. And that's that $2.8 million program that we received in 2020. We received all of that money. So any funds not spent in 2020 can be carried over into a future year. So that $960,000 shortfall, I anticipate, will grow by about $100,000 a month to be about $1.4 million by the time we get to December the 31st. So of our $2.8 million Safe Start federal funding, I expect we're going to probably use about 1.4 million of that in 2020 to offset any of our losses that are related to COVID, which means we have $1.4 million to carry forward into 2021. And so at this point, unless something dramatic changes, it would be our anticipation that we could cover any net municipal shortfall in 2021 with the carryover Safe Start funding of $1.4 million. If that isn't the case, then certainly, as that realization comes in 2021, we'll bring those matters back to this committee and all of County Council to identify where our pressures are with respect to the pandemic and what options we may have to resolve those pressures. Very difficult. We're going through a budgeting exercise right now with all of our various departments. It's very, very difficult for anybody to forecast what will be the impact of COVID in the upcoming budget year. And we're all seeing, some tremendous changes in COVID case numbers throughout, really throughout all of Canada, certainly throughout Ontario, and even in Renfrew County, more activity. And so very hard for us to predict where that will land, but we certainly are thankful for that overarching Safe Start funding that we received. And we anticipate at this time that we should have sufficient funds to carry into 2021 to offset those expenses. Specifically, Councillor Donohue's question about bringing forward a chart in the new year, I do expect to do that. We need to be able to identify what those net losses are because we have to record those subsidies to offset all of those losses as part of our 2020 financial statements. So whether we're able to bring a final report to you for your meeting in January, we could probably bring some estimates, but we won't even close the books on 2020 until roughly the third week of January. And then we begin all the hard work, related to our year-end activities. And so we certainly will commit to bring that chart forward so all of Council understands the full impact of COVID in the year 2020 and whether or not we have sufficient funds that will carry us through into 2021.
Thank you for that. And just to your point, I don't know if anybody else has alerts on the Ontario case count. It just came in. We're now at 1575. So that is not good news for the province of Ontario. Yes, Councillor Donohue, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and I appreciate Mr. Foss's comments, and given that I had a full head of hair before I started looking over the financial reports 2 days ago, this is what has ensued from me trying to wrap my head around this. And part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is just earlier this week, the province announced that I believe Mr. Foss is likely aware of this, perhaps all of the committee is, potentially some new property tax classes that would provide some room for municipalities to provide some potential relief. And for, if you are unaware, certainly I saw a report out of, it was Mayor Watson out of Ottawa, was suggesting that as municipalities, we are prohibited from having deficit budgeting. So if we were to provide some relief in one area, it must be made up in another. And that was part of the reason that I think it's imperative to understand what may be. I think that the funding that Mr. Foss was referring to was that 2.8 million or just under 2.8 million. Because the province or certainly Minister MacLeod in Ottawa had suggested that some of the funding that the province had provided to municipalities could be used to offset. But I think it's imperative that we understand that a lot of that funding is already going to be accounted for. And as Mr. Foss acknowledged, it is a Herculean task, though of course quite possible. And feasible to bring that forward, but those sound like a lot of dollars, but there are places for them even as we speak. So I think that it's imperative that we have a full understanding of that and what the exposure is and what might be anticipated to be borne by the property taxpayer in response to COVID-19.
Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And really just picking up on that comment from Councillor Donahue. So the MFOA document that I had referenced earlier actually begins on page 50 of your report. But on page 51, at the top of page 51, is that very specific item about the province allowing this to create an optional subclass entitled small business. And of course, treating that small business subclass in a preferential manner to reduce their tax burden. Of course, if we go back to everybody's favorite time of the year, when I bring forward a tax policy report, we all understand that if we reduce the liability for one particular property class or group of ratepayers, we simply shift the burden onto all of the other classes and all of the other ratepayers. And in Renfrew County, that burden is in excess of 80% going onto the residential class. So all we are doing is just moving the burden away from small business and moving it onto our residential property owners. Your tax policy working group will have to deal with this issue along with a number of other taxation related items that the province is allowing us to consider as options for 2021. So that report will be very important for all of us to understand what those shifts are and what those shifts mean and where the burden will wind up. The province did throw a little bit of a twist into that MFOA summary at the top of page 51 and said that the province would consider matching these municipal property tax reductions to support small businesses, but of course no details are available for us. If the province is willing to support whatever losses that we're having from creating a new small business subclass, maybe that's something that we'd very seriously want to look at to support all of our small businesses in Renfrew County, but without those guarantees by the province of Ontario to pay this bill, then all we're doing is just shifting the burden around to another class. And then all of County Council will have to make that decision if that's appropriate, given the magnitude of what that shift might mean for us. So lots of work ahead of us as treasurers dealing with property tax analysis in early 2021. So stay tuned. That presentation may be a whole lot more exciting this year than it is in previous. And I know our chair almost can't sleep the night before just in anticipation of property tax report coming forward.
It's like Christmas. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
I must say, actually, I think that the tax ratio session is a remedy for those who cannot sleep. The final question that I have with respect to the Treasurer's report, within the, I know that it appears both because of the process that we account through social services and through Renfrew County Housing Corporation. There were a couple of items within the RCHC that struck me. They are the Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative and the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative, where substantial funds have been received that prior to or up to September 30th, though expenditures were not substantial at the time. And in fact, with respect to OFI, we had only budgeted, I think, $400 and some odd thousand, yet we've received 225% of what we've budgeted. So I'm curious whether that is a multi-year funding program or whether that is another means of providing some funding to meet the pandemic response.
Jeff?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I guess really I begin my comments by simply saying that just reminding committee that the Renfrew County Housing Corp is a separate entity. And it is organized as an Ontario under the Ontario Business Corporations Act. And so all of these various programs, as Councillor Donahue referenced, whether it's the OPI or COCHI or SIF or SHERP or CHIPPY or there's a multitude of programs that are very specific to housing. But all of those agreements are signed by the County of Renfrew as we are the service manager. And so you'll see within the general revenue fund or the County of Renfrew corporate statements that all of the money that we receive for all of those programs are accepted and transferred to the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. That housing corporation, then we flow all of the money, and it's their responsibility then to deliver those programs, and of course they're incurring those expenses. So the statements that are a part of our package show a significant surplus for the housing corporation simply because we flow all of the revenue through to them and all of those programs are not fully delivered. And so there will be a reconciliation and accounting for any of those unspent funds come the end of 2020, and we will make an adjustment within their statements to match the revenues received with the actual expenditures to date. So that surplus, if you will, that you're looking at within the housing corporation is 100% tied to the timing of the revenues versus the delivery of those various programs. So although it looks really favorable, it's really just a timing between when they're able to actually fully develop or deliver those programs. It's a difficult exercise. I mean, what we could do is restrict their revenues within the Housing Corp to match their expenses every month. But administratively, those folks that are responsible for delivering those programs really appreciate the fact that they know what their total funding pots are available so that they can structure their programs to deliver expenditures that match all of the revenues that they know are coming their way. So it's something that we will tidy up at the end of the year. And certainly their surpluses will not be like they are today come the end of 2020.
Thank you for that. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to Mr. Foss. Just following up, and I do understand that, it is somewhat arcane because it is the County of Renfrew that receives these and ultimately then transfers them. But with respect to the OFI program, that was the one I was talking about. I understand that monies will be expended, but even the yearly budgeted anticipated revenue from OFI was $402,000. Yet it is showing year to date we've received, I'm presuming both the county and then subsequently transferred to the Housing Corporation, $952,000. So that's what I'm speaking of. Even with what was anticipated to be the revenue, the actual revenue received is 225% of what was budgeted. Is that, and in going back to the programming, I think that it anticipates three-year funding allocation. So is that 952,000, is that anticipated to be funding over that 3-year period?
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look into this one a little bit farther. The OP program as well as the COCHI program are multi-year, 3-year programs. So specifically, whether or not we've received some funding in advance for that OP program, that's something I'm sorry, I am going to have to look into and get back to you on. From a cash flow perspective, I can see where the county received it and flowed all of those funds through to the Housing Corporation. But whether or not we're receiving funds in advance of their next fiscal year, of course, the province April 1st to March 31st, so we may be caught up in a little bit of fiscal versus calendar timing. But I will have to look into that further, Madam Chair, and provide a response to you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Jeff. I thought the revenue was for next year, but I could be wrong. All right. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, I guess I'll direct it to Mr. Morrow. In going through the statement, I noticed that in planning department that municipal projects were budgeted for revenues of 20,000, and in 2019 they were budgeted for 50,000. In both years there is zero revenue come in, and I see the two departments that I believe the Lord Tiers interact with the county greatly on are human resources and planning. And some of the lower tier municipalities choose to have a human resources manager, and the ones that don't quite often use the county. And it is set up in the human resources that you get free 7 hours per month, and after that you pay. And I'm just wondering, for consistency, if there should be a discussion with the directors of those two areas, and so that we as lower tier municipalities understand when we would pay. Like, it's very clear when I deal with staff in human resources that we say, okay, if you go over 7 hours in human resources, you're going to be paying. Do we want to go to the county or do we want to go outside? It's less clear in planning, although I got to congratulate the planning department. They do give great service and so on. But I think it would be good, and as we're going through modernization, just to have a standard set up that we know when we go, what that we are going to pay. If you choose to have a planner, you may not go as much. If you choose not to have a planner, you'll go more and you'll pay a bit more. So I'm just wondering, when I see those lines and in the last 2 years, no revenue coming in for municipalities, if we should look at it and bring more of a standard there with, or at least if we're not going to help the lower tiers understand, why it is the way it is.
Turn that over to you, Paul.
Chair, through you to Councillor Hunt. So I'll start with the first part of the question, and that is on the revenue side. And I know Craig's on the Zoom meeting as well, but I'll start with respect to the discrepancy in the revenue piece. We've budgeted those years with respect to revenue coming in. The challenge has been the county OP. What we were budgeting for was to undertake the zoning bylaw updates for the local municipalities. However, that has not occurred because we've been held up for those last 2 years with the county official plan. And until the county OP document is updated, there's no point in updating the local zoning bylaws. To get in, so that is where the discrepancy in the revenue comes from. We budget for that and we plan to do it, and we were hoping to have a county OP done, and that would be that project and the shortfall there. Again, I think the severance numbers are down a little bit as well, but that is less of an implication. with respect to process and the difference between HR and the planning department. For most services within the county of Renfrew, we use a user fee bylaw that outlines the schedule of fees that we provide. There is the one exception to that, and that is HR. Through a resolution that was passed by county council some years ago, it was identified that the HR department would provide those 7 hours of free service to each municipality on an annual basis. That provision that was put into that resolution was never identified or incorporated into our user fee bylaw. I'd look to Jeff and I'd say, I think it could be, and we could consolidate that to create a better understanding of all the costs associated that we would invoice or bill out to the local municipalities. But I would turn that over to Jeff and Craig for further explanation if that doesn't cover it off, sir.
Certainly. Jeff or Craig, do you have any addition to what Paul was saying?
Thank you, Chair. I certainly comment on the one with human resources. And in fact, that is exactly the case. It's 7 free hours per year. And then we go to the user fee bylaw, which identifies the billing rate based on the category or classification of employee who is working on the file following that. So whether it was the director or whether it was an admin assistant, kind of assisting with the recruiting process, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly, as Paul had mentioned, although we have a resolution that supports that, our user fee bylaw, could be amended to really include that provision within the user fee bylaw, as opposed to just having this understanding that it's 7 hours of HR time, and then we use the schedule of fees to determine billing after that. We also, within HR, we collect an awful lot of expenses. So if we're doing recruiting for a lower tier municipality, we're typically organizing that advertising campaign for the recruiting. The bills are sent to us, so we're collecting those costs and we're passing those back as 100% offsets to the municipality that's asking for, that service. And so expenses are offset 100%. And then hourly billing happens after the 7 hours. So I think that's a fair comment. And should we include that in the user fee bylaw? I think we could, so that it's clear to all, what services that are available to them on a no fee basis from human resources.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So again, I can echo some of the comments that Jeff has made. I don't mind clarification, Councillor Hunt, as well. There is, most of the time, there is a schedule of fees attached to a planning application or a process that the county collects. There are project specifics, as Paul has mentioned, on zoning bylaws or a large project where municipalities ask us to step in outside of the norm, I guess, if you want to call it that. And we would establish a project mandate or a project cost and description of what is entailed in that project, and then design a work plan around that and fees associated with that. All of us have a fee, an hourly fee, whether my time or Charles or another planner has time spent on that file, and we charge accordingly where that work plan establishes that. But my first comment, I don't mind working with Jeff and the senior leadership team overall to develop more consistent approach to that and how we respond to specific municipal requests that we may get from your municipalities.
Thank you. All right. Anything further? Then we will move on. The Vtac accounts receivable. That's great news. Yes, Councillor Sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to see that. I asked the question as what was happening with regards to that. So when I see that, it certainly gives me a little bit more faith in the government and the word that they extended to the team there. This is a great program, but it's nice to see that money coming through. So hats off to everybody there. Yeah, it's worked very well, and getting the funding as they said they would, it gives me a great deal of satisfaction that the system is in place. So thank you, and thank you to the team that's bringing this to the county of Renfrew. It's a great program.
Thank you for those comments. I absolutely agree. Anything further on 3? Then number 4, cyber crime incident. Oh yeah, everybody wants to speak to this. This is a big deal, and Jeff, I couldn't agree with you more. Hats off to Diane. Great save. Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Peckett, then Councillor Brose.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to congratulate Jeff for bringing this information to us. I've already called our CAO, and we're implementing today the same security measure that the county has introduced. And I would like to make a suggestion that instead of waiting and notifying the mayors at county council that this is a very important issue, that maybe some information be sent out to the CAOs, because electronic fund transfers, it's very convenient and so on, but it is very dangerous. And so this is a great recommendation, and I think it's one of the benefits of being part of a larger organization is we get to share and learn from challenges others have faced, and I think it's very important to get the information out. Thank you.
Agreed. Councillor Peckett.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I agree with Councillor Hunt, but secondly, I think this warrants some sort of reward in some shape or form to Ms. Rance. She's done an outstanding job for the county, and in my opinion, this deserves more than just a little pat on the back, even if it's just something as simple as a night out for a nice dinner or something. But you know, it's part of her job, but she's did something very, very good for the county, and I think she deserves some sort of recognition for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we move on to Councillor Peckett's remarks, with regards to Councillor Hunt, can I just get nods or thumbs up to give staff direction to send the portion about this incident out to the local tier CAOs? Can I just get a thumbs up? Awesome sauce. Okay. So staff can get that out to our CAOs or clerks. Thank you. On to Councillor Peckett's remarks. Does anybody have, is this something that we would normally do, Paul, or is this, and now she might be watching, so now she'll know, it won't even be a surprise.
If I may, Chair, can I leave that up to address? I think Jeff can come up with some ideas.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Brose.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, Councillor Hunt and Councillor Peckett both stole my thunder. So I was just going to suggest that could Mike Barber send out that as a communication piece so that not only would our CAOs get it, but I think it's important that even our individual councillors get that information because it's very, very helpful. And my second question was basically going to echo what Councillor Peckett said, and I was even wondering if there was anything in our corporate policy that would recognize exemplary acts of performance.
So we'll leave the second part up to Jeff. The first part, I would say, if this goes out to all of our CAO clerks, that it be requested that it's included in our own local tier agendas so that everybody knows. That would be my suggestion. Yes, Councillor Donoghue.
Sorry, just on that point alone, Madam Chair, since this conversation was first broached, Councillor Hunt, and I appreciate that the direction was given here, but it seems to me on something like this that it would be appropriate if there was some kind of municipal amber alert, if you will, that I would like to see that this almost be an automatic on some of these things when they become known, that it would be immediately distributed rather than waiting. Like this had the potential to impact any one of us, and in this event, it was the county of Renfrew that was targeted, but it could just as easily have been Admast and Brumley that was targeted. And I would propose that the same thing be part of that. I think that would certainly be consistent also with the modernization, the conversation with the LMPs, et cetera. I think that I would like to see something like this be almost automatic, because the threat would be to all of us. And I think, quite frankly, to even some of the larger private and other public entities in the county.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. So can we give staff direction? Can I just get a thumbs up that this go out immediately when incidents like this happen? Awesome sauce. All right. So now you have direction. I think this is very timely, and I'm amazed that we haven't seen more of it during COVID. But again, hats off to Ms. Rance. All right, moving on. Number 5, the POA workload. Number 6, the POA modernization. Number 7, the MFOA, the budget. And seeing none, Mr. Foss, we can move on to resolutions, please. Oh, Warden, I'm sorry.
I think you may have missed Councillor Sweet's hand.
I'm sorry, Councillor Sweet.
Well, thank you very much. I know we're all excited about the announcements that were made in the budget, but I have to tell you that the town of Petawawa, and I think to a certain extent the town of Deep River, got a little bit of concerns with regards to the business education tax rate and the reduction that's showing a 30% reduction in that particular situation. This could have a substantial impact on the town of Petawawa, and with I'm not going to speak for Councillor Donahue, but not Donahue, Doncaster, because of the very large payment in lieu of taxes that we both receive. It does not impact the county of Renfrew, but certainly from our point of view in the town, this is a major blow to the business education tax that we receive here within the town of Petawawa. And I'm going to have to work, as we are with Councillor Doncaster, on this to try and find some sort of resolve to find the preliminary investigations on this are not very are pretty grim, to be honest with you. This has got a major impact on certainly the town of Petawawa, and to a certain extent, I presume, to the town of Deep River.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I would agree with Councillor Sweet. This is a significant blow to the town of Deep River also. The other point that I'd make, and I would the reduction in this business education rate the tax rate on businesses is not necessarily going to help businesses. If a small business is not the owner of the property that they fill in that they're using, and all of their utilities, taxes, and all of that are built into the rent that they're paying, the landlords are not going to change this. This isn't going to flow to those small businesses. So just in that case, I don't think that this will have the impact that that the province thinks that it will have generally. But when it comes to the municipalities, we've done a calculation just in Eastern Ontario, and it's a rough calculation, but it's between $5 and $10 million that municipalities are going to get hit at with reductions. It's we think it's quite significant in the town of Petawawa. Very significant. It's significant in Deep River, and it's very significant in Petawawa. Having said that, there was a conversation yesterday, and I just received a note about it, with another municipality that just happened to be at a Remembrance Day ceremony with Minister Bethlen Falvey. And this was a complete surprise, and it was this was a consequence that they didn't consider when the province went forward with this, because they thought it was a good idea. So the suggestion was that we need to reach out to the Treasury Board and perhaps Minister Clark sooner than later, before, so that if possible, that the regulations within the proposed budget can be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting, and you're absolutely right, Glenn. I thought of those, we own our garage, but there are several other garages, even in Renfrew, that are rentals, and they're not going to see the effect of what this was, what the flavor of this was supposed to do. Okay, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity, is this the business education tax rate that we're talking about, or the small business property class category that we're talking about? Because it didn't jump out at me, the property tax, the business education tax component. It does say now, again, I would suggest the farm tax program highlights that it doesn't necessarily always offset, but the second bullet point says the province will adjust payments to school boards on the cut to the business education tax. But I'm wondering if it's the small business category that is the topic of this conversation, or if I'm missing something.
Actually, okay, I'm going to let Councillor Sweet speak to this, because he and I had a lengthy conversation about this the other day, and it's a very serious situation, I think. So, Councillor Sweet, I will let you speak to this, please.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair, to Councillor Donahue. This is the commercial business education tax, not the small business tax that they're talking about. And I think, without going into it, because we're currently having this reviewed not only by our treasurer, but by our auditors at this point in time, just to see what impact this is going to have. But it is substantial, and from what I can see on the first blush on this particular situation. And I'll be in a better position maybe next week to give a sort of understanding of what this might be. But let me just say to you that it is a substantial blow in terms of a revenue stream, I believe, to the town of Petawawa, far in excess of, say, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund that we receive. That is my first blush on that, and it is substantial. So we're going to have to deal with this, but as I said before, we'll work with Councillor Doncaster to see if there's some way that we can make a presentation to highlight just how much of an impact this might be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question, I guess I'll direct this to Mr. Foss. Jeff, is this not something that the province had committed to do a number of years ago, but was not ever implemented? That the disparity between residential and the business tax was so great, and they had committed to bringing it down, and it just has not been implemented?
Go ahead, Jeff. That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you. So yeah, the business education tax for commercial and industrial properties, there's no question. There's a couple of issues here. One is, as you mentioned, there is a significant disparity between business education taxes in Renfrew County versus our neighbor. And you could be on one side of the street in Renfrew County and another side of the street in Lanark County and have a different business education tax rate, And that's because those rates were established in 1998 when the province of Ontario changed to this Ontario Fair Assessment System, and they essentially entrenched the apportionment of education taxes that were in place in each one of these either single or upper tier municipalities to collect the same revenues in 1998 as they did in 1997. But what they did is they cemented this inequity essentially through that process. And they have made some moves over the years, and there's quite a history on this that I don't have at my fingertips, but I have brought forward to this committee and council previously the work the province has done to try and move toward a minimum business education tax rate. And we're all, on this path, and it's happened over about 10 years now, to move toward a minimum business education tax. The problem is that those folks that had a lower rate to begin with are also moving to a lower business education tax rate. So the inequity remains. But more to perhaps Councillor Sweet's comments around magnitude, and this may help Councillor Donahue a bit too, is for non-PIL properties, Abbotston Bromley will be collecting three components of the property tax bill, which is the upper tier, the lower tier, as well as the education tax for all of the ratepayers in Abbotston Bromley. And then Abbotston Bromley then remits to the province of Ontario whatever education taxes they have collected from the ratepayers. That's not always the case when it comes around to PIL properties. And that education tax is retained at the lower tier level for some of those PIL properties. And as Councillor Sweet pointed out, it has a significant impact to those municipalities with large PIL assessments within their municipality. And 80% of all of the PIL revenue in Renfrew County goes to the town of Petawawa and to the town of Deep River. So that's the magnitude of it. And so that's why it would be a very concerning issue for those two municipalities. There are obviously other municipalities that have a component of of PIL taxes. And so this move to reducing that PIL amount has a direct impact to primarily Deep River and the town of Petawawa. So it is significant. I've certainly been looking at it as well, but this is certainly an issue for all municipalities across the province who have a significant PIL assessment within their municipality.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, Councillor Sweet.
Just for more information, the PIL program is a federal program. It's not a provincial program, but the change in tax rates that you see here are going to affect that. Payment in lieu of taxes are administered through government services under the federal government. And there is an actual fact of Payment in lieu taxes association that dealt with this particular situation that I'm talking about 25 years ago, because it would have had, and I'm surprised that, as Jeff has said, some of the larger areas like the city of Ottawa that have airports and government buildings and museums and all of that sort of stuff, those in Montreal, etc. It doesn't affect Montreal because it's a provincial thing, but anything along the 401, anything that is of a federal nature, Trenton, in Barrie, areas of that, I'm sure this will come to the surface once they really dive into this and find out exactly how that's going to affect the revenue streams going forward.
Thank you for that. Anything further on number 7? All right, then Jeff, you can do your resolution now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So item number 8 is a tax exemption request that we have received from an organization called Camp Lutheran. And so what they have really done is they are requesting an exemption from property taxes under Section 4.1 of the Assessment Act for a couple of properties that they own. And under that Assessment Act, an exemption can be granted by bylaw to land owned and occupied by a religious organization if it is used solely for recreational purposes. So this organization has already, earlier this summer, reached out to the Township of Bonnechere Valley to see if they could gain an exemption for the lower tier portion of property taxes. But at the same time, they have reached out to us asking if it was possible for us to grant an exemption for the upper tier portion of taxes. So I put before you sort of some of our analysis with respect to this request. And it's simply that religious organizations and charities already receive a property tax exemption for all of the land and buildings that are used to conduct their charitable work. And one of the properties in question, for Camp Lutheran, Camp Lutheran asked for a request for reconsideration. It was reviewed by MPAC in June of this year, and MPAC confirmed that the exempt portion of the property that they have already been granted is appropriate, and that they are not entitled for an exemption within the Assessment Act from MPAC's perspective for this portion of property, which is recreational purposes. The second thing that we did is just tried to get an understanding of what the quantum would be for this request. And so if we were to move forward and grant this for this one property owner, would be roughly $2,482 per year using the 2020 County of Renfrew tax rates. However, a very quick search, and this is not an exhaustive search, it is just something that we've gone into Municipal Connect and we've searched all properties within Renfrew County that have the name church or diocese attached to the property owner. And we count at least 55 more properties that potentially could apply for the same exemption in Renfrew County. And on an annual basis, those 55 properties would be another $22,000 per year if council was to consider granting this request. Just want to highlight that that's not an exhaustive list. That's really just doing an ownership name search, that if council was considering moving forward with granting this request, we would have to get in touch with Impact and clearly identify what are all the potential properties that could also raise their hand and ask for a similar exemption. So our recommendation is really that that Finance Committee not grant this request from Camp Lutheran. And again, we've noted at the end of the report that, if we were to do this, the County of Renfrew would be responsible to investigate each request to determine if the property is eligible, what is the value of the assessment that is eligible, again, the recreational component of the property, create bylaws to enact such an exemption, and then also have an impact at the lower tier municipalities, because obviously the lower tiers are the ones that are administering this on the county's behalf, and there would be no doubt a request from each of these property owners to be exempt from lower tier taxation as well. So that's really, I suppose, Chair, just a very quick overview of the requests that we received for these two specific roll numbers and some of the things that we would like committee to consider. But from a staff perspective, we would recommend that this request not be granted.
Thank you, Jeff. So I will ask for a mover and seconder to get this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Peckett, seconded by Councillor Sweet. Comments? Concerns? I will just say that the Township of Bonnechere Valley actually got the opposite advice, that this did fit in to the exemption under Section 4.1 of the Assessment Act. So we granted it, but I understand where Jeff is coming from, that there are, you know, and not an exhaustive list of at least 55 other properties in Renfrew County. So seeing none, then I will call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Can I get a mover and seconder for Jeff's report as a whole, please? Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, and now we are going to move to page 66 for the Human Resources report. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 66, only a couple of items. Item number one is really just a survey, I guess, that we conducted within the Human Resources Department, really just to get an understanding of recent collective bargaining settlements, as well as get some sense of what our peers were doing with respect to non-union COLA, cost of living adjustment increases for the upcoming period. And we present this information to you just as information, and certainly happy to deal with any questions that may come from it. Item number two, this is something that's certainly more specific to us. Tomorrow, there will be a meeting, a virtual meeting of the Municipal Benefits Group, where Cowan Wright Beauchamp will be speaking with all of our participating municipalities with respect to the changes in Manulife rates for 2021. And you'll see on the table, which is presented on page number 67, that Manulife was looking at some pretty serious and significant increases to their rates effective January the 1st, and that Cowan, through a lengthy negotiation process, are recommending that we accept rates at 6.8% increases for 2021. What does that mean to us as a municipality? Because obviously we are in the middle of budget discussions. We had provided in our budget planning activities for 2021 a Manulife rate increase of 2.5%. So the move to 6.8% has a total cost to the County of Renfrew of about $88,000. Now that's gross costs, $88,000. So that's the differential only. But some of those costs, those benefit costs, are in programs which are already cost shared. So whether it's Province of Ontario cost share or City of Pembroke cost share, but the total gross cost to the County of Renfrew will not be $88,000. It will be somewhere less than half of that, or about half of that. And so still, it's a significant amount of money, but that's spread across all of the departments that make up our $150 million organization. And so at a staff level, we are proceeding with building our budgets based on the data that we had at the time we began this budget exercise in September, but we understand what the quantum is for the pressure that will be upon us because of this rate increase. You can see on the table at the middle of that page, it's long-term disability benefits, which are really driving the costs with respect to the increases. Manulife obviously has an experience rating with long-term disability claims in 2020. Whether or not they are related to COVID or not remains to be seen, and maybe that will be discussed at the meeting tomorrow. But the pressure is coming from long-term disability, and so we leave that for your information at this point in time.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move back to information item number one, which I found extremely helpful. And I know that at our local tiers, we're struggling with, what is appropriate considering that the COLA is only 0.6%. So, and we realize that that's not even a jump off position to negotiate. So we will be using this in Bonnechere Valley. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, number two, the negotiations with Manulife. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As is my wont, I'm going to try and put Mr. Foss, corner him on this again. It just occurred to me. So at $40,000, it is approaching 1% of our overall levy. Of course, our levy is over $40 million at this point, but as a ballpark. However, it occurred to me as well that, as Mr. Foss had noted on our $150 million enterprise, that a substantial amount of this is borne as well by our funding partners, certainly the City of Pembroke, but at the same time, of course, the province of Ontario, I know plays a fairly significant component of funding, certainly within long-term care and the paramedic service here through the Health Committee. So I expect that the impact to the County of Renfrew would be substantially less than 1%. And I acknowledge that that would be a very intricate answer, but would it be safe to say that it would probably be no more than half of that from the levy?
Thank you. And through you, Chair. So given the county levy and of course we're dealing with decimal points here, so it's easy to kind of skip over it, but given the county levy of 47 million, 1% of the county levy is $470,000. And so even if we assumed it was 47,000, it's 1/10 of 1%.
That's right.
Would be the impact on our levy. That's net after we've got provincial subsidy and City of Pembroke cost, et cetera. You know, if I had a little bit of time, I could actually go through and calculate what is the actual net cost of this, but I'm playing with some pretty big general numbers here and saying roughly half would be the net County of Renfrew expense of this change. And it certainly falls into less than 1/10 of 1% of our total levy. So as I said, I think from a senior leadership team perspective, we're going to move forward with our budget exercise as it is, but understanding that there will be a little pressure on the benefit rates as we move forward into 2020, certainly from those departments that don't have any cost sharing. So if we're looking at the planning department, let's say, where we're not cost sharing with the province or the city, any exposure there will be highlighted for sure. And so that's something we're just aware of at this stage of the budget planning discussions.
Supplementary, Councillor Donahue.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Foss, for highlighting I did not carry far enough my decimal. Thank you.
All right, anything further on the Human Resources report as a whole? Then could I get a mover and seconder, please, to accept the Human Resources? Thank you, Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Peckett. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, is there any new business? Well, I'm just going to say once again, I want to thank all of the finance and admin team, the elected and our amazing staff. This has been quite the year. I think that the budget's going to be a challenge if we're doing it like this, but I have no doubt that we've come through this year as positive as possible, and I think we're getting used to this. And although I miss all of you in person, I really do appreciate everybody's hard work. So thank you, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize also. I was slow off the mark. I just wanted to bring forward as a suggestion, perhaps. I had a conversation with Mr. Morrow on this, and I'm not presupposing an outcome, but I do know that the Township of Admaston Brumley has just debentured with Infrastructure Ontario at a rate of 1%. And I had just put in front of Mr. Morrow, I don't know if you've had a chance, Mr. Morrow, to talk with Mr. Foss to bring forward perhaps to a meeting in early 2021. when I looked at the long-term outstanding debt still reported in the audited financial statements, there are some I think pretty substantial savings that could be realized on some of the larger sums. There's one outstanding approximately, at least it was at the start of 2020, $3 million. One was $4 million, and there was a larger one. Each of those two were at 3%, and there was a larger credit facility that was at 5.65. And I don't know what the particular challenges may be of repayment or things like that. But I had just suggested that it might be worth investigating whether some things that were anticipated, I'm speaking here of perhaps the renovations to International Drive. Certainly we have gone through the process and acknowledged that this was going to be drawn out of reserves. In addition to that, I think there was $725,000 of a modernization fund. And then I think there was also a slight top up that was going to come out of social services in addition to that 725. And the only reason I'm putting this forward is Infrastructure Ontario will not refinance anything. But if we were to finance something and use those funds that were going to be allocated towards the renovations at 9 International, there might be some substantial interest savings could be realized. I think we are at a fairly unique window with respect to the cost of money here in Canada. I think that at 1%, we're probably not going to get below that. I know in investigating this, as I would understand, and perhaps Mr. Foss can confirm, I think that the construction loan right now is something like it's under 0.5%, I believe. So I don't know. I haven't done the mathematics myself, which will probably surprise quite a bit of the committee. However, I think that as notionally, this is presenting us with an opportunity to at least investigate.
Absolutely. Yes, Paul, go ahead.
I'll let Chair, let go Jeff should go first.
All right, Jeff, you go first.
Thank you, Chair. So just looking at our year-end financial statements at 2019, $11.4 million in total debt. We have the following debentures. One with our OPP building, which at the end of the year sat at $4,098,000. And of course, that's structured through Infrastructure Ontario over a 15-year period. And that's actually debenture financing, as well as Claybank Bridge at the end of 2019, $3.25 million, again, through Infrastructure Ontario on a 10-year venture financing program. In addition to that, we have $2.7 million still related to Miramichi Lodge. And Council, may recall that when we redeveloped Miramichi Lodge in 2005, we used their $10.35 per diem capital subsidy coming in over a 20-year basis in order to borrow $7.6 million in present value funds. But we are committed to that stream of funding through a capital financing facility until the year 2025 or 2024. So just speaking to those debentures that are in place that we may not have any opportunity to get out of the 11.4 million, we really only have some flexibility with our Renfrew County Housing Corporation mortgages. And we have 3 mortgages outstanding, the smallest of which will actually complete in 2021. It had $66,000 principal remaining. So there are 2 mortgages, one at $369,000, the second one at $946,000. Those would be the possibilities that we have at looking at potentially refinancing existing debt. But as Councillor Donahue pointed out, we may have some inability to get out of those longer term debentures because they were tied to the transfer of social housing. We'd have to investigate penalties, those sorts of things. But on a go forward and future basis, Infrastructure Ontario rates are really attractive. And we currently have the Madawaska River Bridge project, which we are using short-term construction financing to fund. That budget for that project was about $5.5 million. Looks like it probably is going to come in a little bit under that program in total. But we have a great opportunity early in 2021 to convert that short-term construction financing and lock that in longer term. And as Councillor Donahue pointed out, 1% is a very, very attractive rate to lock into over the long term. So these options are available to us, as Councillor Donahue pointed out. Our renovation project here, which originally was viewed as the potential to be debt financed through Infrastructure Ontario. We then looked at our capital reserves and thought, we have those sufficient funds available that we could borrow from our reserves and repay that over a number of years. So all of those things, for new projects are certainly before us as options. The rates are about as attractive as we're going to see in our lifetime, I would expect. There is no way to go down any lower. There is only upward pressure on any of those rates moving forward. So certainly things to consider for our big capital projects moving forward.
Paul, did you want to add to that? No? Okay. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly picking up Mr. Foss's comments. This is a unique time, perhaps in the entire existence of the County of Renfrew, where we still have our holding particular notes, securities, where the County of Renfrew is earning interest of just under 3%, and yet 5-year loan with IO is at 1%, I believe 10 years at 1.66. It is certainly a bizarro world, if you will, that there is that kind of delta. With respect to this is through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Foss. I wonder, is there any penalty with Infrastructure Ontario for early repayment? Because what I had suggested is let us use the OPP building as an example. As committee is well aware, debentures are loaned against essentially the security of the entity as opposed to a particular item. So what I was proposing, and it was just as a proposal, was that perhaps the IO would certainly be looking for some particular infrastructure, capital asset that they would lend against. That's why I propose that perhaps the renovations could be debentured. That would then save money from the reserve accounts that were otherwise going to be allocated to that renovation, but that those monies then reserved could then pay off a 3% debenture that has now been replaced with a 1% debenture. Of course, all of that becomes untenable if in fact there is any penalty assigned. But I note that there's one of those debentures at $4 million expired in 2032 that I anticipate there could be some substantial interest charges saved on that one, and the other one at 3.08% expires in 2028. And as I'd said, Infrastructure Ontario does not refinance, but they would finance another capital item, and then the County of Renfrew would be free to allocate any savings that we may have or to reallocate reserves towards paying off perhaps some of those higher interest rate loans.
Can I suggest, since this was sort of just given to Jeff, that we allow him time to investigate? I believe that there is a penalty with Infrastructure Ontario. I think Bonnechere Valley tried to do that, I'm going to say about 8 years ago, and it just, the return on investment wasn't good enough to pay the penalty, but that could have changed in the last few years. I don't know that. But can we leave that with you, Jeff? Yes, Paul.
Okay, as long as Jeff's fine,
Jeff just gave me a thumbs up.
As long as he's good, then we don't need direction to staff on that. We're fine, Jeff?
Okay, that was going to be my next question. All right, thank you for that. Is there any other new business? All right, so we do have a closed session. So what I'd entertain is a motion to go into closed, but I think that we could all use a 5-minute break. We've been going at this now for 2 hours, and I know the chair could use a quick break. Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, the item that we have for closed is dealing with, and I kind of lost it. But anyway, it's dealing with existing policies. My question is for you is, I'm questioning whether this actually has to be enclosed, or I'm questioning whether this actually can be enclosed.
Well, and we just got it this morning, and I didn't even have a chance to review the policies that were attached. I just read the background. I will ask Paul what he thinks. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Councillor Doncaster and committee for that matter. What I would propose is this is in that gray area of whether or not it should be enclosed or not. I did it out of an abundance of caution because there are only approximately 11 staff that this would apply to. And if you wanted to ask me some detailed rationale as to my thinking, I would speak to the individual staff members that this related to and why, and therefore I wanted to go into closed if you had those kinds of questions for me. If you don't want to talk about the individual staff who have a concern with this, I'm happy not to go into closed and deal with it under new business as a recommendation.
So in the absence of a resolution to go into closed, I didn't know what this was going to fall under. So what you're suggesting is that it would be identifiable individual?
Yeah, on the addendum report that went out, there was a new agenda attached, and it says the purposes under section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local government board employees. So it relates to a small group of employees that have raised a flag.
Okay, my apologies. I'm working off 3 different documents here, and I missed the addendum.
Chair, if committee doesn't want to debate the details of it, they want to have just the merits of the change, the one-time exception that is being proposed in the policy. Yeah, we're fine to do it in open.
So can I see a show of hands? Did anybody want to speak to specifics of this recommendation? Yes, Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not seeking to speak to the specific recommendation. It is because this came to us only this morning with the expectation of it being engaged in closed. At the same time, I'm certainly in agreement with Councillor Doncaster. There are those things that should remain in open and should remain in closed. However, I have not had ample time to review this. I will certainly have to be entirely dependent on Mr. Morrow on this and being what I would say having the hair trigger with respect to questions or concerns that may be raised that may begin to veer into identifiable individuals. My concern here is only that there has been a very, very minimal amount of time to review the document, so I have no independent opinion on whether this should be closed or not.
Yes, Warden.
Chair, through you to Mr. Morrow, is there an option for us to begin this issue in open, and then if we find ourselves going down a road that needs to go into closed, at that point going into closed?
Yes, then the chair can again ask for the motion to move into closed. That's correct.
All right, so why don't we do that? Yes, Warden.
And I know you want to take a break, so maybe, we committee would like to consider a 15-minute break so that anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to read this document do so that during the break.
I think that's an excellent idea. So it is 11:34. So I would say if we could reconvene, say at 10 to 12, knowing also that there's a health committee meeting at 1 o'clock, so we have to be cognizant of time. But I love that idea. I would like an opportunity to read this. I only got through the recommendation and the first couple of paragraphs of background. So if everybody's good with that, we will stay in open. Sean, if you could just put us on, we're on a 15-minute break, and we will reconvene at 11:50. Okay, thank you. And welcome back, everyone. And I will turn this over to Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee. So, Chair, if I may read the recommendation, and we'll start with that.
Absolutely.
That the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that a one-time exception to Human Resources Policy E04 vacation be permitted, granting employees relief from Section 2 and Section 8 of the policy, Section 8 of Policy E04 vacation, where vacation has accumulated in excess of the 1 year carryover as per Section 2 of Policy E04 as a result of the declared emergency in response to COVID-19. That's the resolution.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder to get this on the floor? Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. All right, I'll open this up. Questions, concerns, comments, now that we've all had a chance to review it. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly notionally, I'm in support of this. I think that in my estimation, certainly when the section with respect to a declared state of emergency, it was not anticipated that we might see something on the order of a year or perhaps in excess of a year for a declared state of emergency. So conceptually, I am in support of recognizing the extreme effort that has had to be brought to bear with respect to COVID-19. Just and I'm uncertain of this, so I'm not proposing to make a change in this, but perhaps some more consideration should be given with respect to the policies that need exception, because it seems to me that a fairly significant component of this is not so much vacation, it is overtime in lieu, which is Section 3 of the initial policy. And I note that in both B, which, this is Section 3B of the hours of work and overtime policy, both in the regular time and in the state of emergency. It says that there is no provision to grant pay in lieu of days off. So I anticipate that it is likely that the overtime worked is likely to be compensated in pay rather than time off. So the actual resolution is unclear. It speaks to Section 2 and Section 8 of the vacation policy, but I think it is certainly Section 3 of the overtime hours worked that also needs to be specified, that needs to be accepted, because the vacation policy speaks to banked vacation time. This isn't so much banked vacation time as it is overtime. So I would highly urge that some consideration be given to specifying those parts that are being asked to be or proposed to being exempted.
I'm sorry, I'd like to jump on here, Paul, that you can answer both of our questions. I thought we already dealt with overtime.
We did.
Did I dream that?
No.
We dealt with it months ago, I thought.
Yeah. So that's, Chair, if I may. I'll start. The background starts with a discussion at the May County Council meeting. We did amend the overtime policy of E01 to allow for additional 35 hours of overtime during a declared emergency. That will allow for 105 hours in total that we can address. I'm not proposing we do anything with overtime outside of that for a whole variety of reasons. Opening up the overtime discussion right now in excess would be quite the can of worms for us as an employer, because council made the decision in May to add on the additional 35 hours. Staff have been working to that and have been fully aware of that is the overtime provision. Anything outside of that or in excess of that, they are not compensated for. So we did make sure that we addressed it. What this particular resolution is asking for is we deal with the vacation. And the reason, maybe I wasn't clear, we have a number of employees who have, because of the pandemic, not been able to take their vacation this year. And, staff have, there have been a group of staff. And I know in the report I said 11, I apologize, it should be 7. But there's a group of 7 employees that by the nature of their job, they have not been able to find a mutually agreeable time between management and the employee to take vacation because of the nature of the work that they do within the corporation. That is why I'm asking for this exception to the vacation policy at this time. The overtime piece has been dealt with previously.
Thank you, Paul. Anything further on this recommendation? Excellent. Then I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. All right, so we'll go back to our regularly scheduled agenda. All right. So that's that for 2020 in finance and admin, guys. The date of the next meeting will be at the call of the chair. And again, thanks to everybody for all their hard work. And I will ask for an adjournment, please. Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by, nobody wants to adjourn? Nobody, okay, Councillor Sweet. All right, thanks everyone.